Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Agency Journey. I'm your host, Kuba Greitsar, and with me on the call today is Tycho Luijten, CEO and co-founder at Dapper. Tycho, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Having a wonderful morning. Actually landed two clients this morning, a big bank here in the Netherlands and another fintech. So I'm pretty positive. It's been a good day so far.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that. Wow,
Thanks,
let's keep your positive morning going then. Tycho, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining from Rotterdam, so that's where headquarters is, Rotterdam, the
Okay.
Netherlands, and
Okay,
we have
awesome.
another office in Lisbon. But I'm in Rotterdam at the moment.
Okay, great, great. I had 2 years of Dutch at university. Let's see if during this episode I managed to sneak anything in, although I forgot almost all of it. So let's find out. Let's find out. Alrighty. So on the agenda, of course, you as an agency owner, I want to ask you about your tips, your experience, your perspective on the
Yeah.
whole industry and what agency owners can do better. But before all of that, before we dig into it, I want the watchers and listeners to know you a little bit better as a person, which is why I've got a little bit of an icebreaker question. Tycho, what is the most fun thing you've done this year thus far?
Okay. Good question. I think that would be seeing kangaroos in Australia. Not agency related at all, but I
Yeah,
was
no,
in
no.
Australia visiting my brother, and funny enough, everybody told me that I would see loads of kangaroos everywhere, but I didn't see them up until one of the last days. We were walking through a national park, and then we saw a bunch of them. We saw them everywhere actually at that moment, and a koala even that day. So I think seeing that Australian wildlife was what was probably one of the most exciting things this year.
That's so cool. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting. Just yesterday, I recorded an Agency Journey episode. For the first time, I had a podcast guest joining from Australia. So the connection is crazy. Is there anything
Oh,
else that you saw there that kind of surprised you that you didn't expect? Because I assume you were expecting kangaroos and koalas. Was there anything unexpected?
yeah. Well, the whole vibe was much better than I thought. I never had this attraction to Australia for some reason. Everybody wants to go backpacking and traveling Australia. I never had that. But when I was there, just the vibe is really good. Also in Sydney as a city, I could really see myself living there. Fun, fit, happy people, good vibes. Obviously, the weather is great. It's just a very nice, livable piece of the world. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. I can imagine. I can imagine. One day I'm gonna put a travel itinerary. I'm gonna just take a hiatus for 2 years, and I'm gonna visit all of the places that the agency journey guests mentioned to me. The guy from Australia, he went free diving in Finland. That's where you dive like without any equipment, and he did that in like freezing water under like ice. So yeah, yeah, I'm gonna
Wow.
relive all of these adventures one
Yeah,
day
yeah.
for sure.
I guess my story wasn't as exciting as that.
Oh, I mean, not to compare, not to compare. But Australia is exciting. Hope to see you one day. And when I do, I'll
Sure.
let you know. I'll send you a note. Alrighty,
Awesome.
Tycho. So we'll dig in into kind of the regular agency journey flow
Yep.
here from this point on.
Okay.
So I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your agency in just a moment here. But what I like to start with is something that the watchers and listeners can already sink their teeth into and take notes from and start kind of applying in their business.
Yep.
So I'm going to hit you with the traditional agency journey question. And that is, what is your number one tip for agency operators?
To niche down. That's
Mm,
something that you probably hear more often, and something that a lot of people say, but not a lot of people do. Um,
mhm.
I didn't do it in the first couple of years of our existence. We exist for 5 years now. Dapper exists for 5 years, and the first 2.5 year we didn't have a clear niche at all. We're a marketing agency, growth marketing to be specific, and we did it for all types of companies, big, small, e-commerce, SaaS, B2B, everything in between. And that made it really hard to uh, to grow as fast as we wanted to. So it's very tempting, of course, to take on all the business, especially when you're smaller. But eventually being very clear in your proposition, clear in the niche that you're serving. This is
Mhm.
something that helped us grow very fast in the past 2 years. So 2 years ago, we decided, you know what, we want to focus on B2B scale ups. Um, that's what we're going to create our whole marketing machine around. That's the audience that we will be making content for. we'll be running ads in that small specific group of people, and that's where we want to grow in. So all of a sudden, it became much easier for that group of people to choose us. And the agencies generally that I see succeeding right now in this
Hmm.
current market, especially from 0 to 50 employees, right? These starting agencies, these are the one that niche down. So B2B agencies or e-commerce startup agencies or B2B SaaS agencies, or fintech, niche down. And yes, it's going to be hard at the beginning to say no to a bunch of clients. It's going to be hard to completely focus on a small group of people, but that will eventually help you grow much faster at the start. And then eventually, if you keep growing, then you can start serving different markets, right? But I like to give the example of Amazon. Amazon is not an agency, nothing, nowhere similar to the agency model, but still they niched down. They started off selling books just in the United States, and now they sell about everything to everyone.
Right.
Facebook, another example. Facebook started off on one campus as kind of a cheeky photo sharing app, and now it's a worldwide social media platform. Uber started off as a cab, a luxury cab just in San Francisco. Very, very niche, small group of people. And eventually they expanded. Right now, it's the biggest cab app worldwide. So
Hmm.
niche down, build, and after that, expand.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm curious about here is you said that you decided on B2B scale ups as your
Yeah.
niche. I'm curious
Yeah.
how you landed at that niche and what makes it unique from your perspective.
I landed at that niche because about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, when we started making this more specific, we looked at the clients that we could serve best at that moment with that group of people that we had. So we looked
Hmm.
at the talent pool that we had in house. We looked at the clients that we were serving at that moment, and we decided, okay, this is the group of customers that we can serve best with the resources that we have right now, and also the group of customers that we have most of. So it made most sense to double down on that. And also, we saw that the B2C and e-commerce space was more crowded than the B2B space. And also, we saw that the B2B space was more lagging behind in terms of marketing. B2B is always a
Hmm.
couple of years lagging if you look at marketing innovation. So we knew we could add a lot of value. We knew we could serve that group of people with the talent that we had in house. We knew that it was a less crowded place, and that just made it a very logical decision for us to double down on that niche.
Okay. So you're looking at your existing resources and basically what fit the most in terms of who you're going to serve. That makes a ton of
Mm.
sense. Okay, so my next question related to this, before I give you a chance to kind of properly introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll go kind of to the next steps in the flow,
Yeah.
is you also mentioned that you're creating content for B2B scale ups, and I'm wondering if there's anything unique about how you decide on a content strategy for this particular niche. I just imagine some of the watchers and listeners might be in this niche, so it'll be ultra relevant for them. So I wanted to pick your brain about that for just a second.
Yeah. 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 So we worked on a lot of different content for Dapper in the past 2 years, and
Hmm.
we've experimented with all kinds of content, but all in platform content, first of all. So, content, if we talk about LinkedIn in particular, content that you can see, watch, read, or listen to in the platform, on the platform itself. You
Hmm.
don't have to click away. So,
Hmm.
video content has been working very well for us. Short clips of 1 to about 3 minutes in which we provide as much value as possible, really prioritizing value and no commercial content. So I'm never talking about Dapper or our company, or very rarely. And I'm always talking about the problems of our prospects and how they can start solving it themselves, positioning
Hmm.
ourselves as an authority, but mainly optimizing for grabbing and keeping attention, which you can only do if you have something interesting to say, else people will just scroll by,
Okay.
pass by. Video content, probably the number one performing content for us, and which we have been doing for the past 2 years. But other than that, also written content on LinkedIn, just written posts, carousels, these types of things. Next to that, we have a newsletter and we
Hmm.
have a podcast. And that is because we want to move more towards owned media, because I believe that you don't want to be completely dependent on the algorithm of one big tech. Um,
Right.
but I do have to say that looking at the results, looking at the inbound leads that come from our content and the revenue that stems from it, which is in our case about half. Half of our revenue comes from our content, inbound leads that come from our content. And I would say that most of that comes from video content on LinkedIn. Most of it. And then we post it organically, but we also boost it. So we make sure that our ICP, that small group of ideal customers here in the Netherlands and Belgium, sees that content on their timeline guaranteed. So if you're a B2B marketer or B2B founder in the Netherlands or Belgium at a startup, you probably know Dapper because you've seen us 100 times.
I see. Okay. So you're also boosting this with paid. Am I getting that right?
Exactly.
Okay. So you're mentioning that the content is in platform and focused all on the value. How do you then get it to, and you're saying you're getting inbound leads from it. So what's the kind of mechanism for them to actually convert? Is it just that they know of the brand when they have a need, they reach out, or is there, because it seems to be like a very soft kind of sell is what I'm hearing.
I'm happy that you mentioned that because it's not a soft sell necessarily. It's soft if you compare it to cold calling. And if you say, hey, you need our services right now. But eventually, you're not going to push people to needing an agency or any high value B2B service for that matter. What happens is within B2B, an internal need arises. So let's say there's a B2B scale up here in the Netherlands. At a certain moment, there's a need for an agency. And that is when a marketeer leaves or when they want to go to the next level and they don't have the internal expertise. They got a big investment. These types of things, they trigger a need. And that's the window where they are interested in working together with an agency.
Right.
90% of these types of clients, generally in B2B, this is a Harvard study that I'm referring to, 90% of B2B buyers, they buy from a short list of companies they already know and trust. So there are a couple of companies that they have on top of mind, in this case, agencies, that they will reach out to. And 90% of the cases, they will work together with a company that they know and trust already. So our mission is to be on that list, to be that company that they already know and trust when they don't need us. So that when they need us, which will happen at some point in time, whether that's in a month, a year, or 2 years from now, they will think of Dapper and they will think of no other agency, right? So that is the idea. Our idea is to be constantly visible over a longer period of time, establish authority, establish solution awareness, establish that they understand that if they need a B2B marketing agency, they need Dapper, so that when the need arises and that need we can push, that need happens because of an internal change, internal reason, that they think of Dapper. So even though it feels soft, the revenue that we're getting from it is as hard as it gets.
Right. So it's kind of intense brand awareness and just trust building before they're even thinking of working with an agency. I get that.
Exactly.
I get that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fill in before we move on. So we know a few things about Dapper already. You're focused on B2B scale-ups, etc.
Yeah.
But just for the full context, can you talk about kind of the scale of the agency, range of services, everything, just so we have that filled in before we move on?
Yeah, for sure. So Dapper is a B2B marketing agency, mostly helping scale-ups. We're located in Rotterdam with our headquarters, and then we have another office in Lisbon. We focus on marketing. So we help companies set up marketing engines that deliver inbound leads. We do that by, on the one hand, capturing active demand. Think of Google Ads, SEO, CRO, comparison websites, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, generating demand, right? Demand generation, which is basically being visible constantly with the right content so that eventually leads come out of it. The same as we apply for ourselves. So if we talk about experts, we have 30 experts in-house. The team is about 30 people big. We just hired a bunch of people that are starting this month. So I'm counting these in as well. And we have experts on different advertising platforms, basically all the relevant advertising platforms for B2B. And we have a bunch of content creators and creatives. And whenever we work together with a client, we start relatively intensive collaborations. So we don't just work together on a small piece. We work together on holistic projects generally. So we build a growth team of different specialists, and that team will help elevate the marketing machine of that specific company. We're now 30 people big, but we're a very ambitious agency. So the past 2.5 years, we've been seriously growing. Before that, we were just playing around basically. And now I realize what the potential is of the business. And in 8 years, we want to be a key player worldwide, and the goal is to be with 500 team members at that moment. So we built a plan towards that moment, and
Yeah.
that's what we're working on right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a strong vision, and definitely keen to interview you again once you hit that 500, and you'll tell us all about how you did
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Hmm.
so lots of different directions we can go in from this point on. I think I do want to ask you about some other areas of the agency life in just a moment here, but I'm still
Yep.
stuck on, like, you revealed a lot about kind of how you're building pipeline, and I imagine, so for example, what about video content? I imagine a lot of the watchers and listeners might be thinking, okay, and even myself included, right? We're putting out video content on LinkedIn. I'm doing primarily like shorts from this here podcast,
Yep.
really, clips from our guests. I often interview Gray, our CEO, and I got hot takes from him coming out, sub 1 minute clips, basically a talking head with some animation. That's been kind of the strategy thus far. And it's been going okay. Definitely there could be more coming out of it, but it's nowhere near what you're describing. Key revenue driver, inbound leads coming in. So I just wanted to pick your brain about that for a second. What do you think you're doing that is making this content perform so well? Like, what are the key parts of, like, how the content is structured, maybe promoted? Can you reveal more about that?
For sure. So I think there are two things. It's always about the content and the substance, and it's about the distribution.
Right.
With distribution, very closely linked is frequency. So
Hmm.
when we talk about the substance, um, it's very important that that the content does a couple things. The content, first of all, needs to grab and keep attention,
Hmm.
and that is easier said than done. It's incredibly hard to grab people's attention nowadays, and the reason for that being is because we're distracted all the time, and there's a bunch of
Right.
content out there that is super interesting, funny. Open your LinkedIn or open your Instagram. How the hell are you going to compete with everything that you see there? It's very
Yeah.
fucking hard. So you need to grab and keep people's attention. And that's one of the hardest things. When you have their attention, then you need to tell a story that does a couple things. It needs to build problem awareness, it
Hmm.
needs to build solution awareness, and it needs to build authority, right?
Okay.
So it has to do these things. And if we then talk about, because that's the content piece, and within that there's a lot of freedom, whether it's videos like this, or even a written post or whatever. But it has to do these things. It has to grab and keep attention, build problem awareness, solution awareness, and authority. When you have that, it's about distribution and frequency. And what I see a lot of companies not doing well or not taken seriously enough is frequency. So you need to be
Hmm.
visible often enough. If you're visible a couple times a year or even a couple times a month, it's not going to be enough. You want your ideal group of customers, which should be a small and very narrowly defined group of customers, what we talked about at the beginning, niche down. You want that small group of people to see you constantly and consistently,
Right.
and only then you'll become on top of mind, right? So yes, the quality of the content is important, and that's what we talked about just now. But also, you need to be visible frequently enough.
Hmm.
Only when you're visible frequently enough, then your prospect will think of you the next time that they could use a service of you. And a lot of companies, I see that they don't understand how often they need to be visible. Right. If we
Right.
look at Dapper, I post 4 or 5 times a week. Every week it's 1 or 2 videos.
Hmm.
I have other people in the team now making videos. Other people in the team post. We advertise heavily with frequency caps of 3 per ad. So our prospects see us all the freaking time, really all the
Hmm.
time. If they visit
Right.
our website, we retarget them heavily on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, with valuable content again. So not content where I'm like, hey, work together with Dapper, but with valuable content that shows that we are an expert, that builds problem awareness, solution awareness, and authority.
Right.
Right. So these couple things are important to take into consideration.
I see that. I see that. I would love to dig a little bit deeper still here then. So you mentioned frequency. I was curious about like how frequent exactly. You reveal that kind of in
Yeah,
detail. 4 or 5 posts a week I heard, and two, I think, or three of them videos.
yeah,
Now, you also mentioned in terms of the kind of the structure of the content, because I mean, I want to do better video content. I'm sure a lot of the listeners do too. You mentioned it needs to grab attention and it needs to build problem awareness, solution awareness, and authority. Can
yeah.
you speak to like an example of a video? Like, what do you do to grab attention and to actually fulfill all of these requirements within? Like, what is said in those videos or shown?
For sure. So I'll give you an example. Um, just first some background. What I try to do with my videos, I try to take different backgrounds and
Uh
different.
huh.
I try to record it in different places and switch it up a little bit. And
Okay.
what I notice is if I have the same background 4 or 5 times, people perceive it as being the same video or not being something novel, and it's very
Interesting.
hard to have them stop scrolling. So there's a lot of marketers that say recognition is important, and I see that
Hmm.
as well. For if we take a person like Chris Walker, I don't know if you're familiar with them, and
Of course.
yeah, okay, perfect. Would be shameful if you did.
Yeah. I mean, I
But
logged into LinkedIn once in my life. I know Chris Walker. Like that's all it takes. He pops up right away.
exactly, frequency. Um, so he might be an exception to the rule because he oftentimes has a similar background, but his content is just so extremely good that you just stop
Yeah.
scrolling anyways. But
Yeah.
for other people, what I see works is having novel backgrounds and novel other things in the video that grabs attention. So for me, for instance, I post these videos, and last week I posted a video where I am in a restaurant. I
Hmm.
get my dish served, and that's when I start talking. And I have like something that I want to talk about. I'm just talking about a specific scenario where I landed a client and how I did that, which shows and talking about our methodology, which built all of these things from solution awareness, authority, maybe a little bit more focused on solution awareness and authority. And because it's a weird setting, I'm in a restaurant having dinner served and then talking about this marketing case. It grabs attention, right?
Hmm.
And I did that before sitting in McDonald's and then talking about a marketing case, linking it to McDonald's, or sitting in a busy Starbucks and just sitting at a table with a coffee and just start. So I try to add something novel into my videos
Right.
in order to grab and keep attention.
Okay. And do you have okay from a technical standpoint? Like, how do you mic it up? Do you have like a lavalier mic to be heard well, or is it just straight from the phone?
Rode microphone. So there are a couple things
Okay.
that I think you need when making video content. Um, I think you need a decent camera, but a decent camera can also be your iPhone. A lot of the videos that I record that get 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 impressions, I record with my video. And there's somebody else recording me. I do have to say that.
Okay.
And I have a microphone. So I have a little a Rode microphone, costs €200, not very expensive.
Mm.
And every other Sunday, I do my video recordings. We walk around here in Rotterdam, or we do it in the office. We go to a couple of places, and he's just with his iPhone like this, or sometimes with a camera, and I just do my thing. You know what I mean? So only a good
Okay.
camera, which can be your iPhone, and a Rode microphone, because you want the audio to be as good as possible, of course.
So just for clarity, so it's a clip-on mic.
Exactly.
Okay, like a clip-on mic. I've
Yep.
been meaning to get one myself because I mean, while I love my Yeti, it's kind of limiting because it just stands here, right? And I would love to do more dynamic video content like that. This
Yeah.
is a sign that I should look into that.
Do
Cool. And
it.
what about yeah?
That's and just have your employer pay it for you, of course.
I'll look into that. I wonder if my employer is listening to this right now. Okay, cool. Last question. I want to pick your brain about some other stuff as well, but we went deep into video content. Don't particularly mind that either. So, what about the words in the video? What do you start off saying to kind of get their attention, and how do you actually build that problem awareness, solution awareness, and authority in the video?
When we're talking about the scroll stopper, of course, it's very important to grab people's attention in the first couple of seconds. I don't have to tell you, Kuba, you know how this works. If you
Sure.
look at an 18-year-old on their phone, they're like this. They're
Yep.
scrolling and so freaking fast that you don't understand how the hell they can actually perceive what's on their screen. And
True.
maybe and maybe for the older public, it might be a little bit slower, but we're going past by any visual information on our phone very fast. So we have a couple of
Yeah.
seconds to grab attention. And what I try to do is I try to open with a statement that is either some strong opinion that I have,
Mm-hmm.
or a result that we generated, or
Mm-hmm.
some statement. Just as an example, when I was in a restaurant, um, I started off with the statement, "I closed a 70K deal in one meeting in 20 minutes." That's what I
Wow.
start off with, right? And
Okay.
and that's like, I mean, it might sound a little bit braggy, but it grabs the attention, right? And then after that, I go about explaining how I did that, and what the
Mm-hmm.
marketing machine was before that, that led to such a quick conversion in these 20 minutes. So that's just an example of what I would
Sure.
say.
Sure.
Or I would say the number one problem in marketing now is that we have too many specialists and too little generalists. And then I hope it speaks to a pain point of a specific or of my audience, of my specific audience,
Mm-hmm.
that I go about explaining how and what. And I spend even more time optimizing the scroll stopper in my copy, by the way. So when I write the copy for the post,
Mm-hmm.
when I post it on LinkedIn, I write 5 to 10 versions of the scroll stopper. I just do it in like 2 or 3 minutes, just bum, 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 bum. And after
Mm-hmm.
that, I decide which one I want to actually use.
Okay. Super interesting. You actually caught my attention effectively with that statement you just made. So is that something you actually believe? Too many specialists and too few generalists in marketing right now?
What I see, Kuba, is that when we have specialists, they tend to look at a very small piece of the marketing engine. And
Right.
within
Okay.
B2B, it's rarely ever the case that one marketing channel is the reason for a lead coming in. So, especially in the world of B2B, for instance, just allow me to give you an example.
Sure.
We have a company, and there are a couple marketeers in a team. There's a lead that comes in, and the attribution software says this lead came in via Google Ads.
Mm-hmm.
The Google Ads specialist in that team might think, awesome, we got a lead, and it's because of that campaign that I set up. And maybe when it happens a couple times, that Google Ads specialist says, let's increase the budgets because this is working.
Right.
A generalist, however, would look at the bigger picture and maybe would think, hey, you know what? It's maybe because we're constantly visible with our LinkedIn content, and maybe
Right.
that's the reason that somebody started looking for us and eventually clicked on the Google ad. So let's
Right.
have a look at the complete marketing machine to be able to identify what led to that lead, what led to that lead converting, right? So because B2B marketing, because in B2B marketing, there's rarely ever one channel that leads to a lead. I think it's very
Yeah.
valuable to be able to look at marketing holistically. So I think that every B2B team, B2B marketing team, needs at least one very, very strong generalist that um, that is able to lead that group and is able to look at everything. And what I see is that marketing in B2B is very siloed. So you have the Google Ads specialist just focusing on that, or SEO just focusing on that. That's the
Okay.
reason that I
Yeah.
made that statement.
I see that, and that totally resonates. I think it's a major challenge. It's not easy to do to have like a real full funnel view. And some people, they're good at top of the funnel. They're good at catching that awareness, but they're not super good at then converting it, or they're not paying attention to what's happening. Like somebody fills out a form, what kind of emails do they get afterwards? What kind of follow up do they get? How and when does sales come in, to be able to see all of that and kind of hold it in your head and make some changes that drive it in a positive direction. That's a super
Exactly.
strong skill. I would have that person on my marketing team in a flash.
Mhm. Yep.
Super great. Super great. Okay, so thank you for that, Tico. So I would want to use the rest of our time here to kind of open things up a little bit. We definitely picked a topic. I feel like there's a dozen others that we might get into. So I want to ask you a general question, focusing on kind of the audience that we've got here, primarily agency owners agency operators, you can follow up on what we were talking about before. You can go into a completely different direction. I'm just curious where this is going to go. But what I want to ask you is, looking at the market right now, what's being done, what's not being done, what is something that agency operators, in your opinion, should either stop doing or start doing? Like, what is the kind of number one gap that you see here?
Let's start off with start doing.
Okay.
And I don't know, I know some agency owners, but there's a big pool also that I don't know. And what I see with small agencies is that they might want to do it differently. And I'm talking here about tracking time. Tracking time is not a fun topic. Um,
Depends
right?
on who you ask, but yes, generally
Yeah,
no.
nobody likes tracking their time because it feels a little bit like Big Brother is watching you. Uh, but tracking time basically boils down to starting your tracker whenever you work on this task or that task or that task. We track our time, but we currently don't do it well enough. So people
Mhm.
don't use the same um, folders to track their time, not the same naming convention. So we have a controller that helps us look at the complete picture of the company, where we look at financial data, but also data of time tracking. And we just realized that we don't have the right data to optimize the business. And we're very
Mhm.
late to optimizing this whole time tracking process. Why is this so important? Because it's not because we want to punish people on an individual level if they're not productive enough, but we're selling our time effectively. We're
Mhm.
selling our
Yeah.
time. There are a bunch of agencies that have tried the pioneers to step away from this, stepping away from selling their time. Us as well, but eventually, it's a market in which it's very much the the norm. So it's very hard if you're in a proposal trajectory to have like two agencies that sell amount of hours and the other one to sell just something without it linked to hours. And also internally, you need, at least internally, you need to know how long you're going to be spending on something, because eventually you can only spend people's time once. It's
Right.
like having a hotel, right? If you don't sell your your room in a certain night, you're
Mhm.
not going to be able to sell it that night again. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that night has passed.
That night has passed. So you need to look at the occupancy of the hotel. If your
Right.
occupancy is shit, then you're fucked. And that occupancy is something that you need to monitor closely all the time. Same with an agency. You can only sell the hours of your people once, and if you don't do that efficiently,
Mhm.
uh, then you're fucked basically, and that destroys your profitability. But also in terms of work division, we have a pretty hard time making sure that everybody in our organization is about as busy. Some people are much busier than others. But because the
Right.
time is not tracked properly, we cannot properly see right now, okay, do
Right.
they actually have more client work or not? It's just not properly seen in the data. So my tip would be to agency owners, especially if they're relatively small still, work on your time tracking. Make sure that there's a
Yeah.
culture that accepts that time has to be tracked,
Yeah.
that you track time in a uniform way, that everybody tracks time properly, so you can
Yeah.
build your business data driven. There's no other way to do it, as far as I understand, to do it in this way, and try to get rid of that idea that Big Brother is watching you. No, we're not checking
Yeah.
on an individual level if somebody's doing well or punishing or whatever. We have to optimize the business just like a hotel optimizes their business, because you can only sell your time once, and we're in the business of selling time. So that's a
I love that.
that's a big tip, not so sexy, but something that I do recommend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that resonates so strongly. I mean, anybody listening to this show who knows Zen Pilot, that's exactly what we're all about. And we've helped a lot of agencies actually solve this. They come to us saying they want to either start or improve their time tracking. What we come to them with is like a unified work management system, all within ClickUp, because we're the number one ClickUp solutions partner.
Yep.
And what makes it easy in ClickUp in particular is that when you don't have like a separate side tool for time tracking, it all gets kind of mapped to the tasks that are already within the tool.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like a more general bucket, this is tracked to just account management for a client. But more often than not, you can track it to a particular deliverable or even a step in the process of that deliverable. Like it took me an hour and 12 minutes to do the first draft of this blog post for this client. And once you have insights like that, properly tracked and kind of regularly, then that can lead to huge insights in terms of profitability, utilization. So that's like that resonates super strongly.
Yeah. Do you guys have a time tracking tool within your tool, or do you have any time tracker that you did you guys recommend working with?
So ClickUp has time tracking built in,
Oh,
and
I
that's
didn't
what
know.
we recommend using.
Right.
Yeah, like I mentioned, there's side tools that you can use, and they have their advantages. But what we found is the biggest advantage is when it's all integrated within the tool. Now, displaying that data, uh, ClickUp can do very well, but there's ways to go even further beyond, and that's why we've built solutions like based on, like, I believe our latest is based on Power BI, where
Yeah.
it's still embedded within ClickUp, but it takes that data and kind of displays it in a more robust way. That's called
Yeah.
ZenPilot Profitability Reports. Anybody listening to this can check that out on our site. It's under the products section. I also wanted to mention just a couple of weeks ago, or was it just literally last week? But as of the time of the recording, we published an episode with Greg McKenzie, our CEO, and it was all about time tracking, actually, because we get questions about
Awesome.
that a lot. And
Okay.
that's about how to talk with your team about time tracking and just kind of get through some of the emotional hurdles. Like you said, it's an unsexy topic, right? But how to make it kind of more accepted by the team. Greg talked about that for an hour. It's a huge
Yeah.
episode. Alrighty. Do we have
Awesome.
enough time for like a stop thing then before we wrap up?
Shit, I only thought about two start things. You
Okay.
know what?
Well, it can be a second start thing. I'll
Yes.
accept it.
Let's make the time tracking stop not tracking your time properly. Right? That's it. It's a stop thing now.
I gotcha. Okay, I'm with you. So what's the other thing to start doing?
All right, man. So what has helped me a lot, and bear in mind that I'm a relatively small agency. We're 30 people now, so my tips would be for other small to medium agencies. But what I see
Right.
is that, especially in the size that I'm operating in, is that a lot of agency owners are completely swamping themselves with sales work, which was the case for me as well. Founder-led
Mm,
sales,
mm,
very usual, very common in
mm,
agencies. Um, I was very, very busy running from sales call to sales call, creating proposals, and so on and so forth. And I started making a sales team too late, in my opinion, but I started
I
doing
see.
it. That's all what matters. Right now, what I did is, instead of hiring people externally, hiring salespeople externally, I involved three of our consultants or marketeers in a, let's say, part-time sales team.
Hmm.
And what I asked them to help with is everything outside of the actual meetings. So I know that it's very important for me to be in the meetings, at least in one with every potential client, to,
Okay.
talk about the vision. And there's no one here in the company yet that can pitch Dapper as well as I can. So
Okay.
I know that I need to be there in person or in a video at least once or twice. But everything around it, the crafting of the strategy, the creation of the proposal, the follow-ups, and so on and so forth, the things that take most of the time, I now outsource to experts in our team. Because a lot of it
Okay.
is
Great.
also
Hmm.
consultative selling, right? It's not just about somebody that's social and driven. We do need that substance, and that's what these consultants here at Dapper can help me out with. So that is, I think, something that I would give as a tip to founders that are now swamping themselves with sales work. It's very important that you're in the meetings, but everything around it, try to outsource it. Create freedom in your agenda where you can think about, long-term strategy stuff and things that's going to move the needle forward in your business.
Wow, that's a nice, great self-contained tip, and I'm glad I asked. Gosh, we covered a lot in this episode. We went deep into video content, but I'm glad I asked these follow-up questions because it's clear that you have a ton to share. Really sad that our time just flew by here today, and we're almost to the end of our time. So, how about we help the watchers and listeners learn more from you? Tell our audience like where they can follow you or further steps they can take to get closer to you, get closer to Dapper as we wrap things up here.
Yeah, I think the most logical thing to do would be following me on LinkedIn. you can see my name in the description of the episode. So just
Sure.
put that in LinkedIn and follow me there. And I post, as I discussed with Kuba earlier, this call a couple times a week. So you'll be getting a lot of value through these posts.
Yeah, definitely a super strong follow, and definitely watchers and listeners, you should do that. I'll drop the link to that in the description of the episode so you can easily access that. And that'll be our time for today, unfortunately. Tycho, thank you so much for coming on the show. Oh, and watchers and listeners, for more agency journey stuff, definitely follow us on all the podcast platforms. Don't forget to rate us. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to ZenPilot on YouTube, because we put out more agency journey episodes. We put out ClickUp tutorials, recordings of our webinars. Not everybody knows that, and a bunch of other stuff. So get closer to ZenPilot that way. Go to zenpilot.com, subscribe to the newsletter. Too many CTAs. I always do that. Anyway, that's it for today, watchers and listeners. Thank you so much. Tycho, any last kind of words, last comment before I hit the button?
I think I said everything. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.